Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and like Herman Pontzer says,
if you want to get yourself in a healthy place weight-wise, you've got to worry about the energy that's coming in.
So let's get you to a healthy weight with Herman Pontzer and my take on his top 10 rules for success.
Hey, howdy. That works. Okay, let's get going.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Watch your diet.
If energy expenditure is really hard to budge, which our work and other people's work shows that it is, then if you want to get yourself in a healthy place weight-wise, you've got to worry about the energy that's coming in, the energy that you eat, because the energy you burn off is going to be pretty stable no matter what you do, right? So the way you're going to change your weight is by changing how many calories come in versus how many calories go out, right? Fundamentally, it has to be that. And so the energy coming in is the bigger lever that you have. It's the better tool for weight loss and weight management.
Rule number 2, understand metabolism.
We have this idea that how we utilize energy is additive, don't we? So if I run for 1 hour, therefore I have, I don't even know how many calories that would, in theory, you would burn off by doing that. Yeah. But we sort of feel we can then go and eat an equivalent amount because we've just earned it. Yeah. But it sort of works the other way as well, doesn't it? In terms of if we have overeaten, we then think that, well, I can go for a double run tomorrow or an extra long walk tomorrow to make up for it. But your research has shown that just simply is not the case, at least for most of us.
No, that's right. That's right. That's sort of the idea that you can run and earn your donuts, and it's a dangerous way to think, actually, because when you don't understand how clever the body is about sort of manipulating your metabolism, and you have this sort of simple view of how it works, then you can make sort of silly decisions like that, like, oh, well, I can have the box of donuts because tomorrow I'm going to go on a longer run. And actually, the body doesn't really work that way. The body is a long-term kind of time frame that your body's working under, sort of a couple of weeks or even maybe a couple of months, and it's paying attention to how physically active you are. And if you change that, if you start your exercise program and you're exercising more, you might lose a little bit of weight early on, but as your body adjusts to that new level of activity, your total energy expenditure will sort of moderate and end up not a whole lot different than before you started. And now you think that you're earning all these donuts, right? Because you've been really good and you're doing all your exercises. But in fact, those donuts are going to pile on because your exercise expenditure isn't doing what you think it does. It's not raising the total expenditure per day in the way that you think you would expect it to.
Rule number 3, match intake and expenditure.
Your brain is really good at matching calories in to calories out. And the systems that do that are pretty well known at some level now. We're kind of learning more all the time. But obesity, getting overweight and obese is usually an issue, sort of creeping regulation issue where you're just a little bit off. Mm-hmm. And we're talking like less than like a tenth of a percent off, like tiny amounts.
Wow.
A little bit off in terms of intake versus expenditure on average. And so you gain a couple pounds a year. Well, you gain a couple pounds a year, you go from being a healthy weight 20-year-old to being an overweight or obese 40-year-old. I mean, that is the American that's the American obesity epidemic. And I think it's becoming the global epidemic, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is a brain regulation issue. And, the evidence for that is sort of the way that it develops, but also, for example, if you look at the genetics of obesity. So people have, I think that this isn't work that my lab does, but people who work on genetic variants and the genetics of obesity, I think there's almost 1,000 different genes who, depending on which variant you have of this gene or that gene, affects your likelihood of becoming obese. And all of those genes, with few exceptions, are most active in your brain, right?
Interesting.
So it's not your liver, it's not your muscles, it's not your fat cells, it's your brain. And it's because that's where the rubber hits the road. How well do you track and match intake to expenditure?
Rule number 4, learn about calories.
There's 2 ways you know about calories. You are checking nutrients in, and you're checking your basically your fat stores by checking leptin levels. You don't have so let's unpack that a second, because that's often a critique. Well, there's no calorie sensor in the brain. Okay. actually there is, because you have tons of data coming into your brain about the nutrients in, and you also have information entering into your brain about when you're in negative calorie deficit. So when you're burning more calories than you're eating, your brain knows both of those quite well. And one way that you can tell that the brain is able to sense calories very, very precisely, actually, is this. This is work that Rudy Leibel did in the 90s, but they've done it since in other studies. If you increase somebody's energy intake, you make them overeat. Not crazy amounts. You can't do this forever, but about 10% more than they were at baseline, their energy expenditure will go up 10%. If you make them eat about 10% less, their energy expenditure goes to 10% less. 20% less, you can even track that. And so your hypothalamus is at a system that is matching energy intake and expenditure so precisely that, even in America, where the average American gains a couple pounds a year, that amount of weight gain is a tiny, tiny fraction of the food that's brought in, right? And so to within like less than 0.1%, right, you are matching it perfectly. 99.9% perfect match of energy in and energy out. And so there's no way that that's happening without some regulation about that's sensing calories and matching it, because nobody eats the perfect amount of calories every day, right? Or even every week. And so you're actually doing this level matching very well. So this idea that there's no calorie measurer in the brain, I take the point that there's no, in the same way that you have like a baroresponsor sensor to do stretch to do blood pressure, or you have a temperature sensor. We know the neurons that do that. Okay, true. But we have lots of nutrient sensors, and we have lots of other indicators that tell your body very nicely about how many calories are coming in versus going out. So that's kind of a red herring, I think.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, save energy.
Day to day, you might still fluctuate in your expenditures, right? So if you always run 10 miles on Tuesdays and you sit on the couch all your other days, then yeah, on Tuesdays, you'll burn more calories, right? Because your body can't adjust 24 hours. It doesn't adjust that quickly. It's more of sort of it's a lifestyle thing. Your body gets used to a lifestyle. So if you're the kind of person that's running, 20 miles a week versus the kind of person that's not, the person who's running 20 miles a week and your body's adjusted to that is spending, 20 miles. So it's about 100 kilocalories a mile, right? On average, it's a good rule of thumb. So 20 times 100 is 2,000 calories a week. So 2,000 calories a week is being spent on exercise for you. And that means that person is spending 2,000 calories less on all the other stuff. And so that's what's exciting for me as an evolutionary biologist, is figuring out what does the body prioritize, right? And so we know that some of the things that the body's reducing its expenditures on, right, the things it's taking away from, are some of the really good things that exercise does for you. So if you look at that person who's running 20 miles a week, they're going to have lower inflammation levels. But what is inflammation? Inflammation is actually energetically costly immune function that your body doesn't need to do, right? It's your innate immune function always on high alert when it doesn't need to be. And it's actually bad for you to have high background levels of inflammation. Yeah. Stress. If we look at people who are exercising versus those who don't, the people who exercise have a lower and shorter surge of things like epinephrine and cortisol in response to stress, right? And so they're spending fewer calories on that stress response. And if you are over the course of the day, you're constantly being on high alert because, right, that's not good for you either. So actually the suppression of that stress response is probably really good for you. People who exercise a lot will have healthy, I want to stress this, healthy, but lower testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone levels on average, a bit lower. And that's going to help you save energy too. So your body's basic, and that's probably not the only thing that your body's doing. You might be making other sort of subtle adjustments about how do you sit rather than stand, that kind of thing. So your body's kind of making all these adjustments, and that's how you make the numbers work. That the people don't spend the 20 miler a week, and the sedentary person don't have different expenditures overall, because the 20 miler a week is spending less on these other things.
Rule number 6, avoid processed foods.
The genetics, the gene pool hasn't changed from that picture of the 1950s to today, right? The genetics changes, gene pools change much more slowly. So it's obviously a change of the environment, and it's the food environment. I think all evidence points to it's the food environment. And the big problem is, well, it's probably a lot of things, but if you had to point your finger at one thing, it's this predominance of ultra-processed foods, right? These engineered combinations of salty, sweet, right, fatty, crisp, it's this melange of flavors and textures that our bodies, your brains are never evolved to experience, right? A Hod's man or woman never experiences a Domino's pizza or a fried ice cream, or a deep fried Snickers bar or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just completely overreacts, right? The reward systems go crazy, and it's people have shown it's basically similar to addiction, right? It's similar in that in response to addiction, and you overeat because it's engineered to make you overeat. What happens is we say, oh, it's ultra processed food, and Coca-Cola says, oh, sure, but you better make sure you exercise too. And it might also be that, oh, it's carbs, not fats, or it's fats, not carbs, and all this kind of smoke screen stuff goes up, right, to obscure what is a pretty simple message, which is these engineered foods that are literally engineered. This is how they know they're doing a good job, is you overeat them, right? That's what we're surrounded with. So if you had to do one thing, if you could wave your magic wand, it would get rid of those processed foods.
Rule number 7, understand your brain.
The problem is that when we begin to say, oh, that must have been something in the food that you ate, rather than, oh, it's something in your individual response to that extra energy. And what I would say is, my hypothesis would be, your wife's regulation of calorie intake and expenditure, it was better matched, and she was able to crank up her metabolic rate and burn those extra calories off. That was her evolved response from her hypothalamic system. Yours was different. Yours did not increase your thyroid hormone in the same way. And maybe it did become extra calories. Extra calories still on you as weight. And gosh, if that were true, then that would mean that the gene variants responsible for obesity would be where? They'd be in the brain. And that's exactly where we find them. And so I hear that anecdote, and, I think, that actually mates with that matches the data that we see. The problem with the sort of carb blaming or whatever blaming that you want to do is rather than thinking about the calories that came in and how your body's responded to it, rather than thinking about, oh, it was one special nutrient. It was carbohydrate, and it was the carbohydrate that made my insulin go up, and my insulin took the blood sugar and it put it into my fat cells, and it didn't in her, for some reason. Then that's a reasonable hypothesis, by the way. And I don't want to make it sound like we could just dismiss it. It's a really nice hypothesis. It has generated lots of good science. It just turns out not to be very true. It doesn't hold the data very well. And here's why. If that were true, then the pathways that vary between you and your wife, or that on a population level vary between people who have higher BMI and who don't, we should find those pathways and the alleles that are the genes that vary, that make the difference, active in those pathways. And we don't see them active in the pancreas or the fat cell or the liver. People have looked and they're not there. They're active in the brain. Secondly, if we do controlled feeding studies, then we ought to see high carb versus high fat diets have that kind of response, regardless of calorie counts. We should have people who are on high fat diets lose weight or maintain, and people on high carb diets gain weight. And that, matched calorie for calorie, because the argument here is it's not calories, it's carbs. And when you do that controlled study, it doesn't work out that way. It really does come down to the calories are what determines the weight change or maintenance, not the carb level. So that's work that, like, for example, Kevin Hall has done, but not just him, other people have done it too. And it works in the lab and it works in the real world settings, where if you assign people a diet for a year and you say, you're going to have a high carb diet and you're going to have a high fat diet, and I watch you for a year, the weight change is the same. And you can lose weight on either of the diets, depending on how well you stuck to the calorie counts, not the carb counts. And this is the most exciting one. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the work coming out with semaglutide. So semaglutide it's called a GLP-1 receptor agonist. And basically, this is a hormone that gets made by your digestive system. And it triggers it's a signal to the pancreas to make insulin, because it tells you create GLP-1 when you eat. The stomach and the digestive system sense that food that comes in, and you make this hormone GLP-1. And like you'd expect, it tells the pancreas to make insulin because you just ate, so you better get ready to deal with the nutrients. And it tells your brain that you just ate as well. And so they can make a mimic for this hormone. Well, this mimic for this hormone does two things. One, it increases your insulin levels, and it tells your brain that you ate. You didn't really, but it tells your brain that you ate. This is a perfect test of the carbohydrate insulin model, because if it's only insulin that matters, then you should gain weight because your insulin's gone up. And if it's only signaling about hunger and satiety in your brain and the hypothalamus system that matters, it should make you lose weight because you told your brain you ate. And it is the most effective weight loss therapy since bariatric surgery. People lose 20% weight on semaglutide. So
just because they don't have a hunger mechanism, because the brain has been told you've eaten. They
stop eating. And their insulin levels, by the way, are higher. At least initially. The good news is if you lose a lot of weight, which you do, then your blood glucose levels go down and your insulin levels go down. So all the good things happen anyway. It isn't like your insulin levels stay high forever. And high insulin probably isn't good for anybody, regardless of whether that the CIM, the carbohydrate insulin model is right or not. So it gets all those things down, and that's good. But the initial input is actually increased insulin, not decreased.
Rule number 8, monitor energy prioritization.
Chimani.
The Chimani.
Yeah.
And I found it fascinating that that they 70% of them have an active parasite infection in their guts.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think you're saying that actually, because there's that background level of infection and therefore inflammation, that the body is potentially diverting more energy towards the immune system and less to other parts of the body?
Yeah, so the Chimani show this. There's another group where we've showed this even since the book has come out. Actually, this stuff is moving so fast; it's really fun. But there's a group called the Shuar, which is another. They're also an Amazonian. So the Chimani live in Bolivia. Okay. The Shuar live in Ecuador, and they're both sort of Amazonian rainforest populations. And the Shuar, my postdoc at the time, Sam Erlocker, did this great study looking at children. And so we had Shuar children who are very remote. They do a lot of hunting and gathering. They do a little bit of farming, but it's subsistence, sort of simple, traditional lifestyle. And they have a high pathogen burden too. As you can imagine, if you live without, any sort of modern medicines, barefoot mostly in really remote rainforest environments, you get a lot of parasites, you get a lot of bacteria. So your immune system's always active. And those kids, they have elevated basal metabolic rates, just like we see with the Chimani. But what's cool is with the Shuar population, we've got children, so we can actually measure their growth while they're, because they're kids. And Sam's able to show very nicely, if you look at the amount of immune activation, short-term immune function was something we measure with CRP, C-reactive protein, which is your body's first flush of immune response to a really, an acute stress. Kids who have that, they grow less in the subsequent couple of weeks. Kids who have these sort of long-term, markers, there's different immune function markers that we can use to say, oh, that's a long-term infection, or that's a short-term response. The long-term responses are correlated nicely with kids' long-term growth. So the kids that are constantly getting the most immune hit, right, are backing off of they're backing off their growth. And sure enough, when you measure expenditures, right, total energy expenditures, their total energy expenditures are the same as kids in the US or Europe, right? So these kids are playing with, in other words, these kids are all playing with the same energy budget. You all get the same number of calories, and you can spend it however you like. And if you spend it on immune function, you've got less to spend on growth. It has to be that way, right? And sure enough, that's what we see. So that prioritization is just super interesting to watch happen.
Rule number 9, exercise.
Just because exercise by itself isn't a great tool for weight loss, and might not even get your daily energy expenditure to change very much because your body makes those adjustments, those adjustments are actually what's good for you, or part of what's so good for you. So we can first of all say that there are a lot of benefits of exercise that have nothing to do with the calories burned, right? That have nothing to do with calories at all. So stronger muscles, sharper mind, right? Better immune function, getting outside. If you're exercise out, there's mood effects, right? So there's all these great effects that have nothing to do with calories, and you should exercise. If it was only that, you should exercise for those alone. But the calorie stuff is actually really exciting, because it turns out that all those calories you burn on exercise, the big effect is that those are calories that are taken away from other functions. That's the way you can think about it, right? So if you spend a lot of energy on exercise, your body's going to spend less energy on inflammation. It's going to spend less energy on stress reactivity. We think it's going to help keep your reproductive hormones in a sort of safer range. And so, those are all really good things, and so that's just adds to why, in other words, the metabolic adjustments don't take away from why you should exercise. They actually add to why you should exercise.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is keep healthy food.
The energy that you burn on exercise is so little compared to the energy available in a donut, for example. A typical donut has, let's say, 300 kilocalories in it. That's a 3-mile run, okay? Not walk, run. If you walk, it's a 6-mile walk, okay? So that's but anyway, it doesn't work that simply anyway, because the math doesn't sort of fall out that way. Your body will adjust to your exercise regime, and over time, you don't even get the 300 calories from running. It's sort of your body evens out. Okay. I've got little kids, so this is an issue near and dear to my heart. And it's a struggle because, the kids don't really understand or care about obesity and cardiometabolic disease. That's so far down the road from them. And they're kids, and they don't, they want to have the donut, right? Of course, they're kids. What do you do? Well, I am the last person to tell anybody how to raise their kids. I think that's a hard one just from first principles. But also, tell you what we do is we try to keep healthy food in the house. And I think this is good for adults too. The kids can't have the donut if it's not there, right? And so, our kids occasionally have snacks and occasionally have dessert, that kind of stuff. We aren't too draconian about it, because I think if you make it be this big, scary thing, or this big, shaking your finger all the time, I think that can lead to unhealthy feelings about food as well. So it's a real tightrope here. And I'm not a food psychologist, and I'm not so, this is just a parent telling you what I do based on what I know. But try to keep healthy food in the house, try to encourage healthy snacks as the first choice. And I think that's the best you can do. I think what you have to do. And you can't tell little Timmy, in your example, that running around the block earns him the donut, because I think that sets up the wrong understanding about how these things work.
Why is oil bad? Why is sugar bad? Like, if it isn't the sort of insulin, sugar answer to why people get fat, why do you worry about sugar?
Oh, because I think that hyper-palatable foods, ultra-processed foods, they screw up the energy matching signaling that your hypothalamus does. They are too delicious, so you're pushed to overeat them. They are devoid of the signaling molecules that would typically tell you that you're full. And so, when hunger and satiety have to be in perfect balance like this, and you just do that, well, now you're in trouble, right? And I think that's what I think is so beautiful about, like, Kevin Hall's ultra-processed food overfeeding studies. I think they show that really nicely. So people who aren't over-consuming and aren't overweight, then I don't think you're going to have as much of a problem.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Stephen Gundry, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
So I think one of the things that was probably one of the most controversial statements in the plant paradox was that it's your bad health is not your fault.